Welcome to this class, our Introduction to Positive Parenting. Lesson 1, today's lesson is going to be, what is positive parenting? So Seth, what is positive parenting?
So positive parenting is a parenting model that we've developed over the past, probably this particular model over just the past year, maybe year and a half. And it includes a lot of the stuff that I teach, anyways, but it's put together in a very kind of specific way for parents to learn how to communicate with their children in a positive and yet assertive way.
Right. So maybe it's good to talk about positive parenting in terms of what positive parenting is not. Positive parenting is not authoritative parenting.
Well, what positive parenting is not is it is not. It's really not any of the parenting models or methods that have been taught over the years throughout, and there's been parenting has kind of gone through different shifts and changes, and it's.
So it's neither authoritarian parenting nor gentle parenting. It's not love and logic, but then neither is it
1, 2, 3 magic.
Okay.
It's not. It's none of those. But what it is it is a parenting model that allows you to use each of the parenting models that are out there when it's appropriate to use them. So it's a model that really kind of embraces all of the different parenting models, because here's what we run into. We run into this problem where you have all these different models and theories and about parenting, and they seem contradictory oftentimes. Like love and logic seems very much like it contradicts 1, 2, 3 magic, or
teaching self-government,
or the gentle parenting seems very contradictory to authoritative parenting. And what this model does is it helps you to learn and understand that all of those models are appropriate in their time and place.
One of the problems people have is they read a parenting book or listen to a podcast or some lectures on a specific parenting style, maybe love and logic. Some of our friends, when we were first married, were super into love and logic. And then they want it to apply in every single situation to every single child. And what usually happens is people latch on to a parenting model that fits really well with their first child's personality and their personality. And then maybe they have a second child. And almost inevitably, the second child's personality is a direct contrast to the first child's personality. And everything that they learned about what they think, we've cracked the code on how to be good parents, falls apart in the face of this child who has a different personality.
Well, and a different personality, but also there's also like different times in your life. You're going to parent a 1.5 to 3, 4, 5-year-old different than you're going to parent a 14-year-old, and you have to know that.
Yeah.
And you have to recognize, hey, this parenting model that I used with this child at 5 years old, it's not going to be sufficient for that same child at 14 years old.
So this isn't a one-size-fits-all method, but it's a way of picking your tools for the situation at the time.
Yes, but it is also, in a sense, a one-size-fits-all, in the sense that it is a tool that helps parents remain positive with their children using any of the models. Because some of these models can be used, and you can sound like a dictator and just, really... you can be really mean. The positive parenting as a whole, the whole point of it is to keep yourself from losing control of your actions and allowing your feelings to dictate what you do and say.
So you as the parent.
This is a tool that is more for you as the parent than it is for your child, because it's to help you to maintain equilibrium and control in any parenting situation.
Yes. And we were talking this morning about how your goal as a parent is to be neither your child's dictator or
enemy. I usually just say,
enemy.
you don't want to be
I was
your
trying to remember what word you said.
Yeah, you don't want to be your child's enemy.
But you don't want to be their buddy either.
Right. And so you have to get the right balance to where you remain the authoritative figure in the relationship, but you do it in a way that does not push your child emotionally outside of your influence.
Yeah. So there's a proper submission to reasonable authority without, but still a positive relationship between parent and child, which is,
right.
There's no other relationships that are really like a parent-child relationships. We can say, oh, it's like a teacher and a student, or it's like a boss and an employee, or it's like a government official and a citizen. We can use all these analogies, but none of them really are a good analog for what the parent-child relationship is, because it has this really special love at its core, this God-given bond that happens between parents and children when you are interacting with each other in ways that are righteous in accordance with God.
And it's the kind of bond you don't want in a manager supervisor supervisee at work.
Yeah, so when we're talking about an employer being paternalistic and that's negative, we're saying they're trying to parent us. That's
right.
bad. But a parent should parent.
Right. So it's interesting. I think the closest, obviously, relationship to a parent-child relationship is God and disciple.
And that's why that relationship is used so often in the scriptures for talking about the relationship between
right.
God and
God
human
and
beings. They're a father and children.
Right. And so I like when you're bringing up this bond. And if we think about C.S. Lewis and his four loves, and then he translates those into different bonds that you can have, and the bond you're talking about, this parent-child bond, is the affection bond. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of love we want between a parent-child, is affection. You don't want affection between
a government and a citizen.
A government and a citizen. You want, and even at work, I might want a filial bond at work with my colleagues, but I don't want an affection.
Brotherly love.
Right. You want this brotherly love, this brotherly bond, but you don't want that affection bond. That's not an appropriate bond in that setting. The affection bond really belongs primarily in the household between parent and child and husband and wife.
Yeah. Speaking of C.S. Lewis, he frequently talks about cases where love goes awry in a lot of his different works. And he sometimes focuses on mother love as being a negative thing. So when we talk about how you're supposed to have this bond with your child and how the proper bond is so important, it's also, it can be too weak, but it can also be too strong. It has to have the right amount of elasticity and separation. Too strong of a parenting bond can be smothering and controlling, and too loose gives you the lack of security and belonging.
Well, you also have the problem where if affection is the only bond you have with your child, that's what smothering is. When you're too affectionate. You want to have a good balance between an affection bond, a filial bond, and a charity bond with your child. And if you're not balancing those three loves or those three bonds, your affection will become overbearing. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is oftentimes mothers who have this affection bond but don't build the other bonds, oftentimes they become overbearing, but then they and their children are like, Mom, you're smothering me, get away from me. And it pushes their children away, and they don't understand, because they're like, but I love my child so much. How can they possibly not, respond? Like we were talking about the Gilmore Girls earlier today, and
yes.
how was it Lorelai? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Lorelai kind of I think she has a little bit of an overbearing affection bond. She wants to.
She's a little smothering to her daughter because she wants to be her daughter's friend and buddy.
Right.
And she's reacting to the fact that her mother was an incredibly authoritarian mother, and so she wants to be the opposite, and that also has negative consequences.
Right. And so what positive parenting does is it helps you to balance those affections so that you're not overly affectionate, but you also have that comfort of the friendship bond or the filial bond, and the service of the charity bond.
I think it's really important to remember that our goal in parenting is not to control our children, and our goal in this positive parenting is to learn to control ourselves.
Right. And that's what, anytime you're working with me, our goal is to help you. It's not about the child, it's about you.
It's true. Parents always come to you and say, fix my child.
Mm-hmm.
And all you can tell as a parent is, I can help you change you. I can't help you.
I can't change your child. I can't change your child.
Or your spouse.
Right.
Or your boss.
And so anytime, if you're taking a parenting class, whether it's from Atwater Healing or from some other source, you really need to know parenting is about you as a parent. It is not about your child. It's about how do I respond or react to my child's behavior. And I think that's where a lot of people, they think parenting is about how do I control my child's behavior. No, it's never about how do I control my child's behavior. It's how do I respond to my child's behavior. Now, having said that, responding to your child's behavior should be in the form of teaching, right? That is your job as a parent, is to teach your child. You want to raise your child to be able to be a successful adult. And so you do have to teach. But even your teaching is a response to your child's behavior.
So what are the basic principles of positive parenting?
Well, that's a good question. I think the two things that I think of with positive parenting that I think are the key elements are this. Your job, primarily as a parent, is to learn how to build your child's self-worth. And in building your child's self-worth, there are two major parts of self-worth that make up self-worth. And those are self-confidence and, secondly, belonging. So your job is to build your child's self-confidence and to build their sense of belonging with you and within the family. That's what parenting is really about. I mean, if we think about what does our Heavenly Father say is His work and glory? What is His purpose?
To bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man. To
me, that sounds just like He's saying, my purpose is to build the self-confidence of my children and make sure that they belong with me. Is that not, sure. That's what He's saying. I want my children to believe in themselves, right? And I want them to belong with me. That's what eternal life is to belong with and live with God. And that's what He wants. That's His purpose. So His sole purpose is to help His children find confidence in themselves so that they can live with Him in confidence. And that's our job. Are our children learning those skills? And so when you think about that, you think, well, what is self-confidence? And we say have self-confidence, but what does that mean?
Well, when I was growing up, I feel like the word that was thrown around a lot was self-esteem. And I know that you do not equate self-esteem and self-confidence. And you think maybe focus on self-esteem is sometimes misplaced.
Oh, I think it's very misplaced. I think, here's the thing is, self-confidence to me means trust. Do I trust myself? Do I have confidence that I am capable and that I'm reliable? To me, that's what self-confidence is.
So what do you mean by capable?
Well, am I able to accomplish a task? So if somebody says, would you please go take care of this? Can I take care of it? Or are they asking me to do something that I'm not? If somebody asked me today, said, could you please play your favorite Mozart piece on the piano? no, I'm not capable of that because I've never learned how to play the piano. I would love to, but I'm not capable. And so I don't have confidence. If I sat down at the piano today, I could not sit down with confidence in my ability to play any piano piece.
Now I'm wondering what your favorite Mozart piece is.
Oh,
But that's
yeah,
okay,
I'm not
because
sure.
that is really
I
a
do love
sidetrack.
Mozart.
You do.
But that's confidence, right? In confidence in
Okay.
myself. Now the other thing is reliability, and that would be if I could play a Mozart piece, and somebody said, "Would you please sit down and play this Mozart piece?" Am I reliable enough to do that?
So, for instance, they said, would you come and play Mozart in the background at our fancy dinner, charity dinner that we're hosting?
Right.
If you were reliable, you would show up. If you said yes, then you would show up and you would be there on time and you would play for the allotted amount of time.
And I would have practiced the pieces that I was going to be playing so that I knew I was going to be able to do them. So that's what confidence, self-confidence is. It's a belief in yourself that you are both capable and reliable.
And it seems like that can only be based on experience, that experience builds over time, that over time you build skills and you build this this reliability that you say. I feel like in the Big Five personality scheme that's one of them. They don't call it reliability. What is that one? It's conscientiousness.
Oh yeah, conscientiousness. To
So
me,
don't you think that that's really
that's probably
related,
probably very related. I think also if you go back to the 5 levels of consciousness, to build confidence, it takes actions. I have to do things to show myself that I'm capable. And so as a parent, positive parenting is asking my children to do things so that they can demonstrate to themselves that they are capable and reliable.
So just to clarify, the difference between self-confidence and self-esteem in the way that you're talking about them is self-esteem is feelings-based in levels of consciousness. It's a level 3 based thing.
Right.
Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. Do you like yourself?
Right.
And that's something that we know about feelings is that we don't have very much control over them.
Right.
And that they come and go a lot over time, and that you might sometimes feel really good about yourself and you might sometimes feel really bad about yourself. And that doesn't mean something is wrong with your mental health. That means you're a human being. Sometimes you like yourself. Sometimes you dislike yourself. Sometimes you like certain things about yourself. Sometimes you loathe things about yourself. And you don't have a ton of control over that at any individual moment of the time. But self-confidence is a context-based thing that's based on actions over time.
Right. So you build a confidence or a trust in yourself over time by completing tasks that you either give to yourself or that are given to you and that you're able to accomplish in an appropriate time and in an appropriate way.
I think an example of that might be with parenting is when you have a really small child and they're just learning to walk and they're learning, maybe they're standing, maybe they can stand up holding on to something, and you're trying to get them to start taking their first few steps and you're kind of coaxing them away. And they don't trust yet that they can move away from the stable thing. We have one of our children who could go into the center of a room and stand himself up and just stand there and stand and stand and stand, and he would not take a single step. Like, he didn't have the confidence that he was so stable.
Right,
But he didn't yet have the confidence to move forward yet. It took him a long time to get from that, a longer than average time to get from that point to walking. And then, so first you start having these few hesitant steps, and the child isn't really confident yet. But you're working with them. You're saying, come to mama, and you're practicing with them,
and you're
on
praising
a daily
them
and
when they do.
And you start counting their steps. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you made 10 steps, and you're building, and pretty soon that child is confidently letting go of things and toddling over to you across the room. And they might still fall frequently, but they are daily gaining self-confidence in their ability to walk.
Right. And that's a very early example of what we're talking about. And this is so self-confidence is one of the things that you're trying to build with your children. And that means one of the reasons we call this positive parenting is because you should never, ever, ever tell your child that call them names or belittle them in any way. You should never tell them you can't, you're not good enough, you're stupid.
Negative labels.
Negative labels should never be used with your children. I don't care how angry you are, you should never tell your child something that would give them a negative label and lead them to believe that they are not capable of accomplishing something, even if they aren't capable yet. It's still, even if you have to say, I would love for you to be able to do that, but you're not able to do that yet, you need to do it in a positive way that builds them up and gives them some sense of, okay, not yet, but, Dad said, I can't do that yet. Right? There's this sense then that, okay, I'm maybe not yet, but I'm going to be there. Dad trusts that I will be able to do that. So I think it's essential. That's why we call it positive parenting, because you are always positive in the way you speak with your children and interact with your children.
All right, so the second half of what you're talking about, the two things you're building, self-confidence and belonging. Let's talk about belonging for a few minutes.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. What makes you feel like you belong somewhere or with some group or...
Well, you usually feel like you have things in common.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like you're wanted there and that you want to be there. Both things. Like you might be someplace where people seem like they're eager to have you, but you feel uncomfortable because you don't feel like you fit in.
Right.
So there's a match between your desire to be there and the desire of the people there to have you included. And there's enough commonalities and interest holding you together to feel like this is a group that I belong to and that I want to belong to.
So one of the tools that I will talk about in later in one of the future lectures is telling your children naughty stories about your childhood. Mm-hmm. And that's for the same reason. It's that commonality. They want to belong with you, but if they're doing things that are naughty and they're getting in trouble and they look at you and they think Mom's perfect, Mom never did anything bad, then they don't feel like they belong with you.
I agree with this, but how is this different than trying to be your friend's buddy versus the authority figure?
So
I think that's pertinent to belonging, right? Because when we think about belonging, I think we generally think, friends. Like I belong to my friend groups.
So no, that's good. That's a good question. Belonging. If you think about belonging, so we've talked about we need to have commonalities, and that's a tool. One of the tools we'll go into later.
So you're agreeing with my descriptions of belonging?
I am.
Okay.
And
you didn't respond, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, and we've talked about a desire to be there, and the desire for the members of that group for you to be there, right? But what we haven't talked about is your place. You cannot belong somewhere if you don't fit in. And when we say fit in, not meaning I'm the same as them.
So you don't know where you belong.
What is your place within that setting?
In the cartoon series Over the Garden Wall, which we were just watching this last week, there's an episode where the main characters come to a tavern, and the tavern keeper says, "Who are you?" And they start giving their names, and she's like, "No, this is the butcher, this is the baker, I'm the tavern keeper.
Right.
Who are you?" And they're trying through a song and dance routine to find the role of the characters. Like now that they're here, they need a role. And
right,
it's like,
exactly.
It says, you're the young lover. And it's like, no, you're the pilgrim. Anyway, but the point is,
where do you fit? Where do you belong? What's your role within the group you're trying to fit into? That's where we get into the difference between friendship and being a parent. Because a child should to belong within a family unit, the child has to fit within the child role. Because if you try to put them in any other role, they're not going to have a desire to be there.
So we want them to know their place. Sometimes that phrase has a negative connotation. It's like a phrase of like put them in their place. But it actually is important for us to know our place,
Yeah,
all of us.
I mean, that's a part of our context, right? When we talk about context, we talk about our context is our reality is how we understand the world and where we fit in. We have to fit in. We have to figure out our place. And your child will know naturally that they're the child. And so they'll want to fit into that role as a child. And if you try to elevate them to a friend, which really isn't elevating anyways, but if you're trying to make them a friend, they're going to feel outside. They're not going to feel the desire to be in the group because that's not where they naturally fit. And so that will push them away. And again, it goes back to...
Do we have kind of an inborn sense of where we ought to belong?
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That is one of the parts of nature that's very clear. A lot of research around this, that we know through the research that if you try to be your child's friend, you're going to push them away. If you try to be your child's boss or a dictator, you're going to push them away. There's a balance where you fit as well, and sometimes we pull ourselves out of our own role, right, and make ourselves a dictator or a friend. In which case, again, the child's not going to feel like they fit because they don't feel like you fit, or in that case, they won't feel like you fit into their worldview, into their reality, and so they'll reject you. So usually, as a dictator, what's happening is you're taking an inappropriate role, and the child is rejecting you because you're not taking the parental role. Whereas when you try to make your child your friend, your child is rejecting the role you're giving them because they don't feel that role is the role that they fit into appropriately. In either way, you're going to distance yourself from your child because you're not giving them the appropriate place for them to belong. So now they don't belong.
So do you feel like we've introduced the basics of what positive parenting is enough that people can understand this idea and go ahead to the next classes to learn about how to implement it?
I think so, because I think at this point you can't, we're talking about always being positive with your child, never belittling, never putting them down, trying not to raise your voice, things like that, things that are going to belittle their confidence in themselves. And we've also talked about what are the things that are necessary to feel like you belong, and that your child belongs with you, and that you belong with them, right? So
I think we're ready for a homework assignment for you to work on before you come back to the next class.
Ooh, that's a good question. Homework assignment for this lesson. That's a tough one. Because I haven't given. Usually,
well, we don't have to have a homework assignment for an introduction.
I think we may not. Actually, I do have a homework assignment, and it's a similar one that I give with other introductions. But I like this assignment. I want you to think about it. Trying to understand yourself as a parent, right? Thinking about yourself. What is my parental context, right? How do I fit into my family? What's my role? So what I want you to do for this one is I want you to come up with your parental theme song. What is the song that really speaks to it can be either this, the song that speaks to my inner parent. This is me as a parent, or the song that gives my parental philosophy.
Okay, so it could be a song that represents the parent I would like to be, the ideal parent from my current perspective, or something that represents me the way I am now, whether that's positive or negative,
right,
or not. Okay.
Right, and just
I love that. You love
yourself.
giving theme song assignments.
I do. Music is powerful, and music really does work on the contextual level.
You know
and
what?
That's why
parent theme song popped into my head was "Mother Knows Best" from Tangled. We're hoping that's not the majority of people's.
That's interesting. The one that came into my mind.
Theme.
Yeah, the one that came into my mind was "Take out the paper and the trash."
Oh, yakety yak.
So
okay.
Another one,
that's
yakety yak. So
neither of those are our actual parenting theme songs. They're just
songs that immediately come to mind when you're
thinking about parents.
There's songs that also they're fun songs about bad parenting. So you've got your assignment. you've got a basic idea of what we're going to talk about over the next couple of sections of this class, and we will see you next time.